All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition, Domestic Mythbusters. This time it's not such a Mythbusters edition. This time we are going to run through our latest newsletter that just came out a couple of days ago. And Kai Stromer, my Southern Californian counterpart, will be joining me momentarily. And we will be talking through some of our absolute favorites from the recent edition of the newsletter. Here's Kai just signing in. Our station here, and then we'll have a run through of some wines. It's got some really cool wines picked out today, all featured in the newsletter. Hello, Kai. There he is.
Good afternoon.
All right, how you doing?
I'm real well. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, so I said a Mythbuster edition, but not so much busting myths today, just running through some of our favorites here. So
we've already busted all the myths. Now people know what we're saying is just true.
Wonderful. So yeah, we've just had this new 12-page edition of the newsletter that came out. So just setting the scene here, you and I picked out 4 each of our favorite wines from amongst the newsletter, and we're just going to have a quick run through of them. So you want to kick us off today?
Well, quite the monumental piece we put out. You wrote a ton of content, and I tried to do my part as well, so it's kind of hard to narrow it down to which were the best out of these. But I think knowing what we're going to be showing here, I think we got a real nice lineup. So I'm going to start with the Tatomer 2020 Rosé, because as you pointed out so astutely in your piece, it's still rosé season no matter how you slice it. And in California, especially Southern California, it's rosé season year round. So why this one? Well, because we all, if you drink enough wine, you eventually love the wines of Graham Tatomer. He, as you know, he studied, he learned a lot of his winemaking craft while over in Austria, working for Weingut Knoll, and fell in love with the Austrian varietals of Grüner Veltliner, Riesling. Obviously, coming back to California, that's not how you're going to make a boatload of money, but you clearly see that the guy is driven, passionate by simply what he believes in. So he's added this Edna Valley Rosé to his lineup here, and I got to admit, I don't know if I've had his rosé prior to this vintage, but really taken by it. And I love the way he, so it's sourced from an Edna Valley vineyard that's mostly volcanic soils. The net result is you get a great streak of minerality out of the wine. But also, I think what I enjoy about it, it's the minerality, it's crisp, it's tart, it's refreshing. It's got that aspect that's savory, and it makes you like salivate, waiting for the next sip or a piece of food, whatever you're gonna pair with it. And really, at this late stage of the year, I think this is when a lot of the rosés start to show their best, and I think this one's doing that right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's kind of interesting. It's actually a slightly darker colored rosé, but it's one of those ones that can really help you to understand that color isn't always related to sweetness or anything else, because this has a real pop of color and actually a real big mouthful of nice tart red fruit on the palate, but still searing acidity, really fresh. Yeah, that was one of my favorite wines of the year as well. I really enjoyed that rosé, and as you say, coming into its own and heading on into Thanksgiving here, prime rosé season.
Oh yeah. I always feel like the 2020 vintage for domestic rosé was almost like won me over, that I will drink them equally with French, Spanish, and Italian counterparts. I think they're on that level now. So that's a real treat. Will be great around the Thanksgiving table. And the one thing that color tells you about the wine is the color. You know, other than that, you got to get in there and see for yourself. So,
yeah, it's funny. We used to have an Aussie one back in the day from Hewitson that was always really dark. You know, it was always kind of hard to talk people into, but the wine was still so crisp and dry and delicious. How much does it cost? I think it's
$22.99.
Yeah, I'm gonna say low 20s. So yeah, there you go. Totally delicious. Okay, I'll jump into wine number 1 for me. So the first wine I picked is taken from my little article where I kind of played around with the idea of hoping to introduce people to new wines but taking into account their current favorites or preferences. So, sometimes you don't want to take a flyer on a wine you've never heard of before from someone trying to sell it to you. So it's always fun to kind of pin it to, hey, if you enjoy such and such, give this a go. So I did a whole article of that. And one wine that I featured in here, very light label here, is this absolutely delicious Kerr Sauvignon Blanc from Napa Valley. And I kind of likened it to the Duckhorn Sauvignon Blanc, which is, a real cornerstone of domestic Sauvignon Blanc for us here, always floor stacked in the stores, but running really short this year. In fact, I think you have the last couple cases of Duckhorn Sauvignon Blanc in the company for 2020. Okay. Right. So we might actually be out within a week or so. But this wine I was super impressed with. So the project is from Christy Kerr, who is a champion golfer in her own right, but caught the wine bug a long time ago. Initially was working with the folks up at Pride Cellars, but now Helen Keplinger is making the wines. So great winemaker herself. And this is from Hyde Vineyard and Stagecoach Vineyard. So two absolute premium sources for fruit, and it is all fermented in oak. So the Duckhorn has a portion of that barrel ferment just to build up the texture and complexity. This is all fermented in oak, but only a small amount of new. And it just has this wonderful, pure, highly aromatic Sauvignon Blanc character, but a wonderful texture and depth on the palate as well. Little kind of subtle kind of flinty edge to it from that barrel fermentation, but just beautiful ripeness of fruit, really nicely balanced with mouth-watering acidity. As I say, one of my favorite Sauvignon Blanc finds of the year so far. My wife and I have been drinking this. Great bottle of wine. Just 350 cases produced, but top quality, $30. And honestly, one of my favorite domestic Sauvignon Blancs in a long, long time.
I liked your piece in the newsletter about that. If you like that, then you're going to like this. And to show that we're always honest about this, we had a little thing the other day where we had pitched that the Masakan Ania.
Yes.
And so the person wrote back, does this taste like Rombauer Chardonnay? And well, the answer was no.
No,
it just doesn't. So I'm not going to tell you to buy this.
No, of course. I mean, as you say, there's so many wines out there. There's so many different things we can offer to people, and matching up kind of expectations of what people are looking for is the most important thing. It's really not about us. It's about finding the right wine for the customer that's in front of you. So there you go. There's a good one to add to the shortlist. Kerr 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. Kai, back to you.
I've not had that one yet.
Okay, yeah, check it out. Over to you for number 2.
So, you know what else doesn't taste like Rombauer Chardonnay? Calera.
Yes.
You had an enviable trip to visit them a month or so ago.
Sure did.
And I just started salivating reading your piece on it. And of course, I've been a fan of the property for a long time. So here we're looking at the 2017 Mount Harlan Chardonnay. I did taste it this morning to make sure it was in sound shape, and I'm blown away. I mean, as good as it was then, and it is a root day today, so wines shouldn't be showing great, but this is completely taking it to the next level. This is like regal Chardonnay. This is on a whole nother level. I also think it's prototypical California Chardonnay. It's not, I'm not going to confuse it for Burgundy, even though a lot of the methodology, even the soil types that go into it, but there's such great history, as you know so well. Back, was it Josh Jensen founded the property back in the early 70s, out in the middle of nowhere, San Benito County, up on a hilltop that was, in quest of limestone, and he found it. And little by little built it up. And eventually the wine press got onto him and consumers got onto him, and they all realized, so why today Calera is one of the historic properties of California. And I think that's always like a running theme about what we talk about with wine, along with some of our new finds. But we love this thread of history. So the net result here, now Chardonnay he obviously planted a little bit later. It was Pinot Noir driven project for quite a few years, but when you hit this, it's almost undefinable. The level of complexity, the creaminess, you know, it's ripe apple and the pear, a little bit of spice. I think it's about 30% new French oak on this, but 100% barrel fermented in total. I could drink this probably every single day. I'm not going to, but and you almost can, because you managed to negotiate a really nice price on the wine as well, which is available on our website if you click through.
Yes, we do. We have a sharp price on it. I'm so pleased you picked this one. As you mentioned, yeah, we had an amazing trip to Calera, got to walk all the different vineyard blocks with winemaker Mike Waller. It was stunning. Property I've loved for years. It's fresh in my mind because I actually just poured it for the staff yesterday. We did a really fun, socially distanced, outdoor live staff tasting yesterday in our parking lot. We set up tables and individual tasting stations 6 feet apart, and we tasted outside yesterday, the whole lineup of Calera. It was super fun. So yeah, this wine's really fresh in my mind. So this was actually the Pinot Noir was planted in '75 by Josh Jensen, and then this Chardonnay planting went in the early '80s, and it was taken from stray Chardonnay vines that had popped up within the Pinot Noir plantings. So when the vine material went in the ground for the Pinot Noir, there was just a few random pieces of Chardonnay budwood. Yeah, so they took cuttings from that. And it's, I believe it's 1983 or 1984 own-rooted Chardonnay that went straight in the ground. So very, very cool. Love the wine. Oh yeah, someone's asking. Yes, it's 2017 currently that we have for the Chardonnay. Yes.
Yeah, it is the 17. I
17.
know it's reversed, but you can get an idea there.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Thanks for featuring that, Kai. And next time you're up here, come and visit Calera with us.
Oh, I'd be delighted. Do you remember the exact situation though? Like where were you standing and what you were doing when they poured the Chardonnay for you? Because that whole ambiance of being there makes such a world of difference too. Really adds to it.
Yeah, well, actually, we had done all the different vineyard blocks, driving around them, walking around them. We went and saw the Calera itself and had a little photo opportunity. If you look in the newsletter, you'll see the three of us that were there standing in front of the old Calera. And then we went back and had a little alfresco lunch out in front of the winery. It has beautiful views across Cienega Valley, and we tasted all the wines there out in the open air, and it was stunning. If anyone has a chance to visit, you can go visit the winery and do tastings out there. The vineyards themselves are totally inaccessible, like a 15-minute drive up this switchback dirt road in the middle of nowhere. It's really an eye-opening place to visit, and driven by Josh's absolute obsession with quality limestone, cool climate. Yeah, it already had a place in my heart because the wines were just so good. But now I've actually been there and seen the whole layout. I'm just in awe of the inspiration and the drive to do something like that. And it was worth it. Here we are all these decades on, and it's proven to be a noble endeavor. So yeah, actually I have a Calera wine coming up shortly, another one. So
for wine people, it's kind of like a pilgrimage to get out there and see something like that. I was also just going to point out, if no one's ever really put that together, so that is the Calera, the lime kiln that's on the property that Ryan featured prominently in a nice picture in the newsletter. If you ever wondered what that was.
Cool.
All righty. Back to you, friend.
I am going to do a rosé also. Why not?
Their Pinot Noir is good. That's coming up too.
There you go. So I decided to grab one of the Denman Ranch wines. So if any of you are on our mailing lists, you no doubt have seen some of the wines that we've featured from Denman Ranch. And just a very quick background on it. Sadly, this winery, at least in its current form, looks like it's going to be a victim of the pandemic. It was kind of a partnership between a money guy and a winemaking duo, a husband and wife winemaking team, Colin and Christina. And it seems that these new releases, which were the 2019s, kind of hit right at the beginning of the pandemic. The money side of the equation kind of had second thoughts on exactly what direction they were going to go in. So basically, I was introduced to the wines through a mutual friend, Eric Prahl of Reese Vineyards, and he said, "Hey, got this good friend. He's a great winemaker. Used to work at Literai. His wife was the assistant winemaker with Eric's wife, Chantal, at Flowers. They've got these phenomenal wines, and they're looking for a home for him." So, I mean, hearing the guy worked at Literai and et cetera, I thought, right, I have to check these out. So they sent me a whole box of samples, and we basically ended up buying everything they had. So we've emailed the wonderful Van de Kamp Pinot, the Fallen Leaf Vineyard Chardonnay, but I also bought this totally delicious little Sonoma Coast Rosé of Pinot Noir from them. Comes from a little tiny vineyard, almost kind of like a backyard vineyard in the Petaluma Gap. And it's picked specifically for rosé, straight pressed. It's just wonderfully fresh, vibrant, beautiful acidity, real kind of spice citrus peel. It's a 2019, but it's absolutely fresh as a daisy, and under a screw cap here. Just a great wine, and the value is phenomenal. Because we took this big position on everything they had, we got this all the way down to $15 retail. So winery was selling it, I think, at 28 or 30, and we're selling it at $14.95 for totally delicious, very deliberately made Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir Rosé. So yeah, this is one I bought a case, and I'm through it. So there's going to be another case purchase here at some point.
Yeah, those wines have been a huge hit with the LA crowd as well. The staff loves them, and obviously the sell-through rate's been insane. So real feather in your cap, man. Good job.
Those wines are so good. I mean, honestly, when I heard, Literai, Flowers, Van de Kamp, another Pinot we got from them, the Sonoma Coast Pinot, which is actually going to go in our wine club. That's actually almost entirely from Griffin's Layer, which is another like super high-end, well-renowned vineyard. So yeah, when I saw the pedigree of the winemaking and where the fruit was coming from, I was like, these have to be a no-brainer. And as soon as I tasted them, it was confirmed. The wines are excellent, top to bottom. So yeah, definitely check these out.
Everybody's on board with those.
Grab a case of this before all the K&L staff have bought it for their holiday season. So
no, the depletions are for real.
All right, back to you, Kai.
Well, for those of you who just joined us recently, we're talking through some of the highlights of our newsletter that we just sent out the other day. And so it's highlights the best of domestic wine. So obviously this could be a 2-hour long thing, but it's not going to be. But we've narrowed it down to about 4+ wines each. And so at this point, I'm going to move into, in fact, so if you noticed, I went rosé before Chardonnay simply because I think that's how I would serve it for dinner. And that Chardonnay has just got such gravitas, it had to come following the rosé. I thought the rosé would get bowled over. But so transitioning into red wines. So one of my favorite wines over the last few years has been the Pinot Noirs from Matt Kinney at McKinley Cellars up in the Willamette Valley, up in the Chehalem area. What blows my mind about this wine, well, it looks like I've already poured it, so I don't have to do that again. What blows my mind about this wine is the level of complexity and deliciousness, and it's under $20. So I tell people I think it's the best sort of pedigreed Pinot Noir from Oregon that I know of under $20. But if you're gonna look at the United States or possibly even the world, I think it kind of makes that under $20 list one of the best Pinot Noirs I know. And so that's what we featured it in the best of California Pinot Noir under $20 and Oregon Pinot Noir. And so this, what I love about it too, is you also see the color, again, like we were talking about the earlier wine, super light, nearly translucent, but again, all it tells you is the color. There's so much intensity here. Proprietor Matt Kinney, he's a third-generation farmer up there, though his doesn't come from winemaking roots. That's what he got into, and he converted his farm into winemaking. But to kind of like learn his chops, he went down to Sonoma County, and he worked at Hanzel under Bob Sessions as assistant winemaker for a while. So he learned how to make not just Pinot Noir, but he learned how to make a legendary Pinot Noir. And then he went back home, and he's a real humble guy. He's not so interested in traveling the country trying to sell his wine. So as he puts it, I lead with the price. So we sell this for $18. Most of the wine is sold out locally. Little bits of it come down to California. So we're delighted to have it. And don't think it's just because of the price point. Oh, it's a simple little fun quaff that's nicely made and pleasant. Because when we visited him in January of last year, just before the COVID shutdown, he went down to the cellar and he pulled out his very first vintage, which was 1987. So it was the 1987 version of this. And sure as shit, the wine was great. We drank it pretty quickly, and you know, I was hooked.
That's awesome.
You know, when you dive into this thing, it's got that sort of like forest floor. It's got the cranberries, a little bit of tartness, but there's nice kind of strawberry compote underneath. Real kind of mid-weight on the palate cleansing. There's great acidity to just push it back. Have you had a chance to drink this one, Ryan? And what were your thoughts?
I'm not certain, honestly, if I've had the new vintage that you have, but actually, talking about depletions, you know, maybe a year or two back, I noticed how much of this wine you guys were selling down in Southern California, and I'm like, we've carried the wine over the years. I was like, I gotta check this out again, because they're going gangbusters on this down in Southern California. So yeah, so I picked it up and cracked the bottle for myself, and yeah, it's really serious Pinot Noir for the money. And it's real Pinot. It's not just a tutti fruity, you know, simple thing. It's really got some depth, and it embraces some of the savory character of Pinot too. Really serious.
It definitely has that Oregon sort of ethos. You know, you wouldn't confuse it for Russian River. You wouldn't confuse it for Santa Rita Hills. It's clearly Oregon. So if that's what you're into, you really got to give it a shot. Also, it's a screw cap too, so it's like easy access. And personally, I'm a big fan of screw cap wines.
Me too. Yeah, I must admit, I have no negative prejudice against them whatsoever. There we go. Sorry, say the price again. Did you say 19, 18?
We sell it for $17.95.
Awesome. What a steal. And I liked your piece, and I wholeheartedly agree. I really do think there's some stunning values in domestic Pinot Noir. Probably never more prevalent than right now. Seems to me that Pinot Noir deals are coming our way all the time. So great if you love drinking Pinot Noir, which I do. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Calera. So from our visit to Calera, we get back in the car after a really just stunning day, as I already said. And I say to my colleagues, Ralph Sands, who's been with K&L for 40 years, Bordeaux specialist Ralph Sands, and Julio Santos, our Redwood City store manager. We get back in the car and we're like, wow, you know, that was incredible. Any favorites? All of us said Mills Vineyard Pinot Noir. For some reason, like Mills just really spoke to all of us. So the Mills parcel is a section that is planted on its own roots, 1984 planting, and it is in a very limestone intense subsection of the estate. So literally you look up the slope from Mills and you can see this giant limestone outcropping just bursting from the top of the Mount Harlan peak. So basically Mills is planted in this kind of fractured limestone that has broken off this rock face and come down onto this nice gentle slope, southeastern facing. And the wine for me just really captures everything that Calera is about. But it just seems to have this elegance about it. It's funny because it's a really stressed parcel. I mean, talking to the guys there and looking at the vines, the canopy is barely making it to the top wire of the trellising. The vines are really scrawny despite their age, and the amount of fruit on it is just minuscule. But the finished wine just has something about it that's really hard to put into words. It has this pure pinosity. It has this wonderful soil-driven quality, haunting aromatics. It's just such a stunning wine. As I say, I'm kind of struggling to describe it. You kind of have to taste it. But yeah, it's a wine that I think is just world-class Pinot Noir, and also a beautiful illustration of exactly why this terroir at Calera is so special. And this is the 2017 vintage. We have really good pricing on it, and has some huge press for folks who like to see some third-party recognition. 97 points clocking in on this guy. Yeah, featured prominently in the newsletter, and one of my favorite Pinot Noirs of the year to date.
You even convinced me. I picked one up as well. Mine's not open. I'm saving mine for the weekend.
I caravan mine so I can keep it for the weekend to have with a nice meal too. $60. I mean, it's not cheap. Certainly not everyday wine for me. But you know, when you look at the quality of the wine, everything that goes into making it, I think it's still a pretty good value on the global stage. It's really magic Pinot. It's also still a baby, 2017 vintage. This wine will go for a really long time. The crew at Calera were super happy with the 17 vintage. I know it was problematic around California. We had some heat spikes around Labor Day. Obviously, the fires up in the North Bay, but 17 for Calera was a dream vintage, mostly because we had huge rainfalls the winter prior. So the biggest struggle for Calera is water, as it's becoming for just about everybody in California. So those big winter rains really replenished the reserves up there, and the vines were super healthy, had a nice crop on them, and so they were super happy with 17 vintage. And they get enough cool influence from the Monterey Bay to kind of take the edge off those big heat spikes that we had. So check them out, all the wines. And we had Reed in the newsletter as well, and we have the Grand Cru parcel, the Jensen vineyard in there as well. Just moved into the 2018 vintage after the 2017 vintage flew out of here. So check them out.
Do they get any fire pressure in that area? Have they seen anything over the last few years that they felt was jeopardizing?
I don't think there's been any fires in that kind of immediate proximity to it. I mean, in 2020, obviously there was kind of smoke just about everywhere. I didn't actually talk with them too much about what happened for them in 2020. Just down the bottom of the road from them is N's Vineyard, and I know, you know, some folks managed to get some clean fruit out of there. Some folks were a little concerned about some smoke taint in there. So yeah, I mean, I presume Calera had some kind of effect from it, but not from any immediately proximate fires. I mean, there were fires down in Carmel Valley, obviously lots up here around the South Bay, Santa Cruz Mountains, East Bay, east of San Jose. It's tragic because it could be. I mean, that whole property is surrounded by forest, and it's pretty dry in there in those kind of Hollister Hills area. So let's fingers crossed we haven't had any big kind of main wine country fires this year. Obviously, the Sierra have had some pretty tough weeks, but seems like most people are wrapping up for vintage right now. Looking at people's Instagram feeds, I'm seeing a lot of people saying last fruits in, you know, so harvest coming to an end for most folks.
Yeah, you know, I hope that from the consumer's point of view, that when they see vintages where they know there was a fair amount of fires, that you don't just automatically discount it, because it affects everyone a little bit differently. It doesn't affect many people, probably doesn't affect most of the properties. And then too, even the ones who may be in the proximity, they've got techniques and methods for dealing with this, such as I tasted that new release from Evening Land, their 2020. It's a Pinot Noir where they just removed it. There's no skin contact at all. So it's not really a rosé, but it's kind of a rosé. But they were just trying to do this is our no smoke taint, just to be sure we left the skins out of this thing. And the wine's lovely, and they priced it accordingly. So you could buy it for $20. And it's, you know, Seven Springs Vineyard, Evening Land, 2020. It's quite delicious.
That wine's really cool. Actually, I was going to ask you about that because putting together a deal with them, I was going to ask you if you wanted to feature that as a Thanksgiving wine, because I think that is a perfect turkey wine. So
that's what yeah, we're already saying that at the store, because we opened a bottle on Saturday. So yeah,
that wine's super cool. So let's get that one in the Thanksgiving edition of the newsletter. As for now, on to you for your next pick.
All righty. Well, it's fall, so fall often means Cabernet season. it's funny, we drink so many other wines these days. Sometimes we neglect how great Cabernet is. But here is a newish, oldish property called Chardonnay. We both worked with them a little bit here. Ed Schneider, whose family is 100 years of winemaking in the valley, he had a property for several years called Vineyards, which was, I think we were both big fans of. Him and his wife, Trish, gorgeous wines, and a little bit off the radar, but little by little, people were figuring them out, and the critics caught up with them, and eventually they even got a 100-point score for one of their Cabernets. So, Ed really knows what he's doing here. But so he sold the property, and I guess not having had enough of winemaking, he founded the Chardonnay estate. So it's 4.5 acres up on Atlas Peak, on sort of a confusingly named Pritchard Ridge, not to be confused with Pritchard Hill. But anyway,
kind of next door-ish.
Say again?
It's kind of next door-ish.
Yeah, I guess so. It's in eyesight of. But this is actually today my first time tasting this wine, and I'm absolutely loving it because it captures the best of the 2018 vintage, which we both agree is a wonderful vintage. On account of two reasons. I guess the long, cool growing season really gave the grapes a great chance to develop phenolic ripeness without becoming overly ripe. So at harvesting, you really got some balanced fruit coming out of there. The net result are wines that are a little bit cooler in style, but they have body, richness, and structure. So it's almost like they're hitting exactly where, for my taste, where I would want a Cabernet to hit. And then to get it, onto the nose, you get that little burst of cassis, which I think is fascinating. There's a little bit of like roasted herbs in the distance, and fruit and tannins and structure behind that, but amazingly appealing at this youthful stage. Not 100% Cabernet. It's Cabernet Sauvignon with some Cabernet Franc and some Merlot, but I think it's north of 85% Cabernet Sauvignon. So that is the dominant varietal. But this is a lovely wine at under $40, $39.95, which is, I think, kind of a little special K&L price going on there. I'll put this up against a lot of $60 and $70 wines, and if you want to put it in the cellar, this has easily got 10 years to go. I think you're a fan of these wines too, aren't you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I put that one in the newsletter as a potential alternative to something like a Caymus, one of those bigger, richer, really accessible fruit-forward Napa Cabs. This one, to be honest, probably a little more restrained than Caymus these days, but still has that really good kind of soft, upfront, rich fruit. It's not a big tannic wine, it's very accessible for drinking now. But yeah, I just thought it was really well made for the money. Had some really nice press accompanying it. Showed off the purity of the 2018 vintage. So yeah, I just thought it was really classy, really well-made cab for the money. So why not? We sell a ton of Cabernet. Cabernet is still our biggest varietal as a company. So whenever we get the chance to get a great value of Napa Cab, I like to get it out there and give the folks what they want, I guess. So yeah,
especially from good people too. It's always nice to support the people we've worked with in the past that that are
totally.
small operations.
I think maybe you know them better than me. This wine was brought to me, and I was just kind of assessing it on its own merits. But I'm glad that you could fill in some of the backstory behind it as well. So.
I remember several years ago at Premier Napa Valley, I was hanging out with a bunch of people, and we went to the Martini Bar after a bunch of tastings. And I sat down with a group of people, and I didn't know who the woman was initially who I sat down next to, but it was Trish Schneider. And she's one of the funniest people I've ever met. She had me laughing for like a solid hour. Just one of the easiest people to just get along with. And when I walked out of there, I'm like, I'm always going to sell your wine. She was just amazing.
That's cool. That's awesome. Good to know. Yeah, I love it when there's good people behind the wine too. That's really fun.
And you mentioned Caymus. Listen, irrespective of price, I would buy this wine 100% of the time, always, over Caymus Cab. No offense to them. I think this is a better wine.
There you go. Perfect. And why not? Save the money. So talking about a wine with a fun backstory. Uh, my last wine here, and a brand new producer to me, well, brand new producer in general, is a Clivity Vineyards from Alexander Valley, and this was a real nice surprise for me. So the folks behind the project reached out, sent me a couple of bottles to try, and I was immediately impressed with the wines. And then kind of reading a little more into it and checking out the backstory. Basically, it's two guys started this really small project, kind of out of their garage initially, and just this is their first, commercial release. But the real magic secret, I think, here, or maybe not so much of a secret, is Kyle Kemp, one of the two folks and kind of the main winemaking force behind it, is the cellar master at Staglin Vineyards over in Napa. So, we've got someone whose day job is working with the creme de la creme of Rutherford Cabernet, crafting $250 bottles of Rutherford Cab. And here's their own personal side project where they're focusing here on Alexander Valley Cab, which obviously we know is already a renowned place for growing great Cabernet. So in the newsletter, this was kind of my Silver Oak alternative. Obviously, we sell tons of Silver Oak, an iconic property, been around forever, and happy to continue selling as much Silver Oak as people would like to take. I mean, sometimes it's one of those brands that's probably not replaceable. It has a lot of history and a lot of sentimental value to a lot of folks that have been drinking it for decades. So, not in any way to slight those wines. But if you like really great Alexander Valley Cab, check this wine out from Clivity. It's so impressive. It has this really beautiful kind of smoky, deep red fruit kind of character. Lots of earthy tones. It really represents the varietal. It's not scared to have a little bit of that, tobacco leafy elements too. I think it's less than 14 alcohol. Let's see. Yeah, 13.9 alcohol. It's real Cabernet. Beautiful structure. It's serious stuff. Kind of, blackberry fruits, great length on the palate, beautiful natural acidity, very food friendly. I was just super impressed with the wine from day one. It's real wine. It's something you could lay down. It's something you could decant now, have with a nice piece of red meat. And again, it clocks in at $40. And I think the quality is through the roof for that money. I honestly think once these get into the hands of the critics and the right kind of people, I could see these wines picking up some serious steam. So, yeah, Clivity Vineyards, Alexander Valley Cab, 2018 vintage, definitely one to watch and check out if you like slightly more old school, structured style of Cabernet. Definitely check it out.
It also brings up the point how much we're looking at Cabernet from Sonoma County. I know in the newsletter I featured two, the Senegal Details and the Gallery Latro, and those are both, well, Knights Valley, and then it's an Alexander Valley, Knights Valley blend. But people don't always think to look for their Cabernet over there. Obviously, Jordan and Silver Oak made great history doing that. The wines tend to be a little bit more silky, a little bit more elegant, a little bit more approachable in their youth. So they also tend to be less expensive than their Napa counterparts. So it's really, if you're into Cabernet, you really should be looking at these, and the Acclivities is a must to check it out.
Yeah, no, the wine's really good. You can see the pedigree behind it. I mean, another favorite place for me in the broader conversation of Sonoma Cab is that Moon Mountain AVA now that has its own sub AVA. I mean, that area is putting out some just remarkable calves, long live 50-year wines with just incredible structure, varietal typicity. These are big, powerful wines that you can run with any, Howell Mountain or, Napa equivalents. They generally don't fetch nearly the amount of money, but I think the quality's there every bit as much. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on these things. These guys make fantastic Merlot as well, which I may well bring in too. So yeah, definitely a label to watch. Really attractive packaging as well, I thought. So yeah, keep an eye on this one, folks. Check it out.
Super cool.
All right.
There's a lot of newsletter out there, so I hope people will click through on the website, and it's posted on the blog, and it came out electronically, and there's, what is it, 12 pages long of great advice from the two of us. Read it.
Yeah, read it, check it out, shoot us any questions you have, let us know the feedback on the wines. We always love to hear from you. And
yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. Kai, you all set?
All good, brother.
All right, good to see you. Take it easy, man.
Cheers, man. Be well.
Cheers. Bye.